Hi friends, most people who have high cholesterol are asking the wrong question and not getting the results that they want. They usually ask, how do I lower it? But the better question is, why is it high in the first place? And is it really a problem? Because if you don't understand that, you can try to lower one number, but still miss the real problem. So today, what I want to do is something very different. I want to show you 20 natural ways to optimize your cholesterol through food by addressing the why and which one. That gets lost in the conversation because cholesterol is not just one thing. And the environment it travels in makes a huge difference in whether or not you are increasing or decreasing your longevity. And at the end of the day, cholesterol is just one small part of your metabolic health. By the way, my name is Dr. Liu, and I have a unique perspective about cholesterol and metabolism because of my skill sets. I've been a clinical physician for over 27 years, double boarded in both internal medicine and infectious diseases. And guess what? Cholesterol is a factor that can increase or decrease your risk of infections. And cholesterol is just one marker of a person's inflammation, metabolism, and immunity. And not long ago, that was the number one reason why people didn't make it. In fact, America lost 6.9 million people from 2020 to 2021. Look, folks, we're losing the game of longevity, focusing on the weeds of lab tests and distracted from the big picture. So number one is eating this, whole avocado. Avocados have monounsaturated fats. And I know there are people who believe low-fat diets are the way to go. And sure, you can do that if you have high blood sugars, insulin resistance, and get more insulin sensitive. But you may still have high cholesterol numbers. And if that's the case, adding whole avocados may actually be supportive to optimize your cholesterol numbers. And just so that you know, there are several different cholesterol numbers, which we will go over later. These numbers, they all reflect different parts of your metabolism, as well as inflammation. And avocados are not only high in monounsaturated fats, that's why it's so creamy, they are also high in fiber that will support your gut microbiome, reduce bile acids, and there are so many different foods that you can make with avocados. You can use avocados to make actually a brownie, a shake, or just eat it as a dip, or you could just scoop it out and add it to your favorite food. Number two is to add nuts. Nuts are so good for your health because they're high in polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, which are very supportive for you to optimize your cholesterol and cellular metabolism. It's actually quite beneficial to use nuts as a replacement protein for several times a week for your other proteins. It is good fiber, it has good micronutrients, it's high in minerals and vitamins, and again, it has essential fats, polyunsaturated fats, that are so rarely found in the standard American diet. And number three is to make tahini. Now, tahini is simply sesame seeds ground to a paste, and this is wildly popular in hummus. I used to make dressings with tahinis to make different sauces, and I can show you how to make some of that later too. And really all I did was take these sesame seeds and then just keep blending them until it forms a creamy paste. And this is not as creamy as it can get, but you can get it even creamier. It's because it's full of plant sterols, monounsaturated fat. It has plant lignans from the sesame seed, magnesium, copper, calcium. It really matters because we're not just giving you fat, we're giving you other essential compounds that you require for your lipid metabolism, for your metabolic health, and for your inflammation. And sesame seeds appear to reduce triglycerides. Meta-analysis have suggested that really eating sesame on a daily basis can help support people with type 2 diabetes and metabolic dysfunction to get their cholesterol numbers better. And this is why it matters, because we're not just trying to target a number, we're trying to target health, right? So optimizing your numbers in the wrong way may not reduce inflammation. But sesame contains bioactive compounds. Lignans called sesamin, sesaminolin, tocopherols, and polyphenols. They actually appear to reduce inflammatory signaling and oxidative stress pathways through NF-kappa-B, and it affects lipid peroxidation. It affects inflammatory mediators like CRP and IL-6. Another one is garbanzo beans. I have here a garbanzo bean snack that I made. When you eat garbanzo beans, it improves your insulin sensitivity, reduces your blood sugar, talks to your gut microbiome. And, this is so easy. I just combined tahini, seasoned it, and baked it with garbanzo beans. I got a can and I opened the can, I rinsed it. Or you can make your garbanzo beans fresh. It's up to you. And ultimately, you could cream it together, almost like mashed potatoes. That's hummus, right? I made this a little bit crunchier by air frying it with a little bit of oil. I really didn't actually need oil. It was basically just the oil for the tahini paste. And this helps you combine two different foods to eat all at once. So the first thing I want to do before I make my tahini is get my garbanzo beans roasted. So these are my garbanzo beans. I drizzled a little bit of cooking oil on top of it just to make sure that it gives it a little bit different texture. And depending on how high you want to heat it, that will depend on, what kind of cooking oil you should use. Because some of these cooking oils, actually, they do burn quite easily, right? So you don't want to air fry like something like olive oil. That just wouldn't be a wise thing to do because you'll overheat your oil. Okay, so I'm going to just spread this around. This is like an oven. I can air fry if I wanted. I'm probably just going to slow cook it. The slower you cook your items, I think the healthier it is because you have less of a chance to burn it, right? So I'm just going to spread around these garbanzo beans. This is about 4 cups of cooked garbanzo beans that I just opened from a can and I rinsed it. And then I poured a little bit of oil on top, cooking oil, and you can put some seasoning or spices, but I'd like to do that after it heats up just because sometimes it burns the spices. So, or you could do it halfway through. Halfway through, you can turn it around. And I'm going to just put this on like 325 degrees and let it dry up a little bit for 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm going to take this in the oven and I'll be right back. So when it comes to cholesterol, it's super important to focus on high fiber, high polyphenol foods. And that is a sweet potato. Sweet potato are high in fiber, high in polyphenols. Look at this purple color. It's exactly purple all the way through. There are all different colors of sweet potato, but I go for the ones that are rich in polyphenols and these anthocyanins, really, this purple color. So I'm just going to chop this up. So today is going to be sweet potato night. And sweet potato goes well with many, many different foods. And notice I don't take the skin off. I don't take the skin off because I want my people to eat the skin, right? That's why I don't take it off. It's super important to eat the skin with food simply because the skin is super healthy. Most of the polyphenols and fiber is concentrated in the skin because the skin protects the plant. And then in essence, when we eat sweet potatoes, we're essentially borrowing the plant's immune system. And I'm just chopping them in half, depending on how big the pieces are, to make sure that they cook evenly. You want to spread your sweet potato out so that they are evenly spread, nice and airy. This way it doesn't stack upon each other, and then you can get a drier layer on top. Try not to burn your food. It's never good to eat carcinogens, right? If you want to help your liver out, you don't want to make more carcinogens. And when you burn your food, you're making carcinogens. Okay, so this is going to go in the oven and I will be right back. Okay, so while those items are roasting, we're now going to make our tahini. Tahini is really easy to make. All it is sesame seeds ground into a paste, okay? So let me show you how to do it. It depends on how much tahini you want. Let's say pour, this is roasted sesame, right? I don't want to pour that that little thing to, make things fresh. Forgot what you call it. You pour things in a food processor. And remember the rule, before we use food processors, we need to protect our ears because these noises can cause hearing loss as we age, right? So I'm going to show you how to make tahini. It's just like making peanut butter. You just pour the seed in and you blend. Notice down here, it's already forming like a paste, right? On top it's loose, but it's forming a paste. And the longer you do this, the higher the level of the paste will be. You're just basically blending, destroying the fiber, releasing the oils and the protein. And this is tahini, right? It's getting thicker and thicker, a little bit harder to blend. I can already smell the sesame. It's so aromatic, right? You see how thick it's getting? Right? Now it's just sticking to the side, so you know that that is really tasty. And with this sauce, you can make so many different sauces and flavors and textures. It's very, very tasty. Okay, I think we're ready. Okay, so I usually make more tahini than I am going to use because that's just a lot of fat, right? That's what it looks like. It's just going to be a lot of fat if you overeat it. And I will save some of it. The more you blend it, the more buttery it is. I'm trying not to overeat fat so easily. So I'm probably going to just leave, this is about 2 tablespoons left, right? Because when you make sauces, you probably need 2 tablespoons to flavor it. And remember, this is not just sesame oil. It tastes different because it has a polyphenol and the fibers and the protein. It's just very different than sesame oil. It's a very unique taste, so it's not the same. So when they ask for tahini and you substitute the recipe with sesame oil, it's just not going to taste the same. All right, so remember my rules when I make sauces. You want to add some spices. So I have here onion powder. Usually I will add turmeric. So instead of turmeric, I'm going to add some mustard because the mustard will give a little bit of sourness, right? You want contrast when you add sour. You also want a little bit of sweet. This is a little sour. I'm also going to add fresh lemon. If this isn't enough, I have more lemon right here. So I'll just grab more lemon. The other spice, you want a little kick. So maybe a little cayenne pepper, maybe some garlic. I'm actually going to heat this up. So it's okay that I overdo it on the garlic, right? So, and I love garlic. So I'm going to use this to flavor different kind of vegetables. Another thing that I like that's aromatic are onions. So I'm going to just chop up these onions and put it into my food processor. So this is how easy cooking can be. You just throw everything in the food processor and then you really don't have to worry about things, right? So let me chop up my onions. I'm supposed to put this back on my food processor. Since it's on, you gotta be very careful because then you don't want to stick your finger in it. All right, and then I'm going to get some salt. My family won't eat it if I add no salt. For me, I don't need the salt. So as a compromise, I use only miso salt because miso is the only sodium salt that I know that does not raise blood pressure, okay? And then I'm gonna throw in also these dates. There's, I remember you have to pit it, you have to check it. These are organic medjool dates. I open it up to make sure there is no mold, as well as to de-seed it, okay? So I put 2 dates. I'm also gonna put lemon to balance out, right? Gives it a little bit of sourness. So the heaviness of the sesame seeds. Put some onion powder. And I had mentioned I'm going to put some mustard. Woo. Just going to put a little bit of miso. Okay. And I am going to blend it. Remember, ear protection, right? Whenever you use ear protection, you save your hearing for when you grow old. Okay. Now, this is a little thick. So I'm going to add a little bit of water in it. And it's kind of stuck on the side. And I would eat this, except I put so much garlic that I would be a little bit afraid to eat it. And what I'm trying to get is a creamy emulsion, right? Kind of working a little bit. Okay, I'm going to show you what it looks like. And what I'm going to do with this is basically cook it on heat for a few minutes and then drizzle that on vegetables. It'll be delicious, right? This is what it looks like. It's a creamy sauce. See? Pours out. Oh, that's our garbanzo beans. They are ready, right? So it's a creamy sauce. It could be a salad dressing. There is quite a bit of garlic. So, you know, if you like garlic like this, go for it. But this would be a little bit too spicy for my palate. Okay. So that's what it looks like. And I'm just going to use this as a seasoning for all different things. You can use it to season your garbanzo beans, put it on your salads, or make stir fries. And I'm going to make some asparagus and broccoli with this creamy sauce and mix it with the sweet potato and garbanzo beans. And that's going to be a dish that I'm going to do for dinner tonight. Just a quick note before we continue. I see messages and comments all the time from people who have watched a few of my videos and didn't realize that they weren't subscribed. So if you find value in my videos, can you click the like button and double check that you are subscribed? It's free and it really does help get my message to other people. And if you are subscribed, thank you very much for joining me to change the world. Black beans are another form of beans that can help you lower your triglycerides, lower your blood sugars, get insulin sensitive. And it is, in fact, one of the most effective foods for improving cholesterol because they are rich in a specific type of fiber called soluble fiber. Soluble fiber binds bile acids in the intestine. Bile acids are made from cholesterol in your liver, and it normally gets reabsorbed and recycled because your body likes to do stuff like that. But when you eat soluble fiber foods, the bile is excreted and so goes the cholesterol. So this forces the liver to pull out more cholesterol of your bloodstream to make new bile acids, hence lowering your cholesterol levels like LDL. At the same time, black beans support your gut microbiome. They eat it, metabolize it, produce short-chain fatty acids, which further improves your lipid metabolism. So when you eat foods, you're also feeding your friends, and this supports your long-term metabolic health. This is a longevity win because you're changing your metabolism through your friends. But let's go through some quick wins. Number 6, sweetened beverages. You got to cut them out, folks. Whether they're in your coffee, your tea, your soda, drinking sugary juices, they will overwhelm your liver when you overconsume them. They contribute to high triglycerides and ultimately lead to fatty liver. And that takes us to number 7, move more after meals. That's one of the easiest ways to improve your triglycerides and your blood sugar. That's to just walk a couple of minutes after meals. Ideally, you can do 5 to 15 minutes. That can significantly help you lower your metabolic burden after you're eating. It reduces post-meal glucose spikes and insulin stress, and it gives a better vascular environment for your cholesterol to swim in, and that really matters. Number 8, a big part of controlling your cholesterol is to control your appetite. Don't overeat. When you overeat, your body converts those calories straight into triglycerides, and hence that's one of the benefits of eating whole foods. They prevent you from being hungry. Now, the way you don't get hunger is if you target foods high in protein or high in fiber, and ideally both, like nuts and beans, right? And if you think about it, Americans are already getting an A+ in achieving their protein requirement, but they're getting an F in achieving fiber. So if you keep doing what you're good at, you just never get good at the other parts that you're bad at, right? And fiber is really what we need to increase in the American diet. 99% of Americans don't eat enough fiber for their health. And hence, simply eating less food controls your appetite, but doesn't necessarily equate to longevity because you may not be getting the essential nutrients and ingredients that you need to propel your health, your gut microbiome. So food quality matters. And that's why when you look for quick wins, you may miss the longevity wins. And that leads us back to another longevity win is to add ground flax seeds. So these are not ground, and you can see the difference, right? The not ground flax seeds are so much bigger than the ground flax seeds. Seeds are all high in protein, lots of fibers. These have lignans and essential omega-3 fats that are so beneficial for longevity. You can use this as a binder. You can sprinkle it on your food. If you ate this, you're not going to digest most of it. So that's why you should grind it up. Or you can do chia seeds. That's another way to get essential omega-3 fats. The same thing that they used to put on chia pets. Just put it in your favorite, let's say plant-based milk. You leave it for a little bit, and that soluble fiber will just soak up that water and bind that water together so you have an amazing pudding-like texture. And you're getting essential fats. You're reducing your cholesterols because remember, soluble fiber binds to bile acids. Bile acids have cholesterol, and that gets pooped out when you go to the bathroom. And all these interacts with multiple parts of your body because it has vitamins and minerals and proteins and lignans, right? It helps also to control your blood sugars, which is an important point people miss about cholesterol. That's number 11. Cholesterol exists in a high sugar state. That would be prediabetes, diabetes, high insulin, high hemoglobin A1C, or even post-meal spikes. That cholesterol particle is probably more damaging. The glucose contributes to oxidative stress. So improving cholesterol without improving your blood sugar is often an incomplete solution and will ultimately lead to blood vessel damage despite having normal cholesterol. And hence, a number by itself is not as important as a clinical outcome. So have you ever wondered why people with normal numbers still have bad outcomes? And that's because the means do not justify the ends. Lots of people with normal blood sugars and normal hemoglobin A1Cs, they're going into renal failure and having amputations because they forget that insulin is an inflammatory hormone. And they're giving themselves more insulin to achieve a perfect blood sugar number. Likewise, when you focus so much on cholesterol and you forget the big picture, the underlying reason for why the cholesterol is elevated, then you will suffer the consequences, which could be a heart attack, a stroke, other atherosclerotic events.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
Cholesterol does not exist in a vacuum independently of your other bodily functions. And that's also why it's important to do number 12. Check your thyroid status. If you don't have enough thyroid hormones, if you're hypothyroid, your LDL and total cholesterol will be high and you will be dealing with fatigue, constipation, dry skin, hair thinning, cold intolerance, brain fog. Don't ignore your thyroid. And there's another organ besides the thyroid that can cause severe inflammation, contributing to abnormal cholesterol numbers. And that's visceral fat. That's number 13. It's not enough to check whether you have visceral fat, but you actually need to reduce it. Visceral fat is not just a marker that you're overweight. You can actually be skinny and have a lot of unhealthy visceral fat. And we call those people TOFI, thin on the outside, fat inside. This means that your unhealthy fat is hidden inside, and we can't tell by looking at you on the outside. And that visceral fat is alive. It's causing inflammation in your body. It's infiltrating your liver, your pancreas, your abdominal cavity. And there are two ways that you can check for it. Number one, you can do blood tests and indirectly check for your insulin sensitivity. That could be done through a glucose tolerance test, which you drink a boatload of sugar water, and then we measure how your body reacts to sugar at different time intervals. That's pretty tedious, time-consuming, tastes bad, and nobody likes to do it unless you're pregnant. Another way to check whether you have visceral fat is to do an imaging scan. So we can do an abdominal ultrasound and looking specifically at your liver fat. Or you can get radiation like a CT scan, or you can bypass that radiation, but it costs more and get an MRI. CT scan, any kind of radiation, I'm not in favor for. But if you don't want the CT scan radiation, you can get a DEXA scan radiation. Definitely not as high, but it's also not as accurate. But it is reasonable because people get DEXA scans for their bone density. They just need to look at your body composition and estimate your visceral fat. And honestly, you can save yourself a ton of money just by measuring your waist circumference. And what you do is you want to measure the middle between the lower of your bottom ribs and the top of your hip bones. And that's going to usually be your umbilicus for most people, your belly button. You stand upright, feet shoulder width apart. Don't suck in your stomach. Don't push it out. Just relax. Inhale, exhale, and you measure it at the end of each breath. So this would require a flexible tape that's snug around the skin, but not compressing the skin. You read that number several times, and ideally you do it in the morning when you don't have all this stuff in you. And then if your waist circumference is over 35 for females or over 40 for men, you are considered high risk for having visceral fat. And the caveat is it doesn't work in people who have TOFI, who look thin on the outside, but they're fat inside. This is really a marker of your insulin resistance, how well you metabolize carbohydrate, and if you have chronic inflammation that's causing other problems, right, in your life. And simply by changing how you eat, even if you're bedbound, can help you reduce that. So that brings us to number 14, oats. Oats contain beta-glucan that has been shown to improve cholesterol. Now, keep in mind, we're not talking about oats drowned in sugar and fat. We're just talking about oats itself. They are super important. They do have fiber called beta-glucan. Beta-glucan does lower cholesterol because it forms a gel to pull and bind bile acids. And bile acids are made from cholesterol. Your liver then has to synthesize more cholesterol, and that's how the cholesterol gets pulled from your blood. And when you eat oat bran, that is super concentrated in beta-glucans. But oats aren't the only food with beta-glucans. I had mentioned here is barley. You can get the same benefits in addition to your oats by eating barley. And this interacts with your gut microbiota because it's also eating the fiber that you eat when you eat whole grains. And if you've been watching my videos, you know that I'm a huge proponent of getting a diverse amount of foods variety from all different nutrients so that we can get all our vitamins and minerals and all the polyphenols and everything else from a variety of different foods. Now, fruit, I mentioned when avocados have monounsaturated fats. But other fruits like apples aren't fatty, but they have a soluble fiber called pectin that can also bind bile to prevent you to reabsorb cholesterol. Then you flush it down the toilet. You can also eat number 17, pears, which is similar to apples. They contain pectin. And again, they have soluble fiber, which binds bile acids that forces you to pull out more cholesterol from your bloodstream because you're pooping out the bile acids. And these aren't the same as drinking fruit juices, which often lack the pectin because you juiced it out. So when you drink excess fruit juices, you're actually increasing your triglycerides. I mean, it's better than soda, but it's not quite as like eating the whole food. So that's why number 18, I think eating seasonal fruits, like citrus fruits, like up here, tangerines are super beneficial because they too have fiber, flavonoids to help your body reduce cholesterol. And again, it's not drinking tangerine juice, it's eating tangerine with all the fiber. So number 19, is that fruit often eaten with your oats? Those are blueberries. Blueberries contain polyphenols and fibers that supports your metabolism to help you get metabolically healthy, to reduce insulin resistance. And number 20 is something that I see rising in popularity in the markets, and that is hemp seeds. They're high in protein. They can curb your appetite. They help you mitigate insulin resistance, lowers inflammation, and all this helps to support lower cholesterol. Really, the options are endless when it comes to food. There's so many whole foods that are so good for your metabolic health. I think we get lost in the weeds because we've lost what our end goal is, right? It's important to keep that in mind. Why do you want to have a good number? Are you going for bragging rights, or do you want to achieve longevity? If you want longevity, then you need to be an expert on your own health. And that starts with a thorough understanding of your body's physiology on a microscopic scale so that you can make sense of the discussion of cholesterol that's online. There is way too much controversy and contradictory information. But if you understand the basics, you can determine whether a person is making a valid point for longevity or just putting on a good show. So let's go into the weeds and take a deep dive and separate cholesterol into LDL, triglycerides, HDL, ApoB, and lipoprotein little a. So we're going to talk about why these markers behave differently in prediabetes, diabetes, fatty liver, thyroid disease, inflammation, and sepsis, and even a unique group of people called lean mass hyperresponders. I'm sure you know people who are struggling with their health. For example, like your grandparents or maybe your parents who have been hospitalized. They have pneumonia or sepsis or infection. Some body part, right, is infected. And oftentimes The doctors will check a cholesterol and it's super low. But, these super sick people had high cholesterol when they were checked last month, and all of a sudden it's normal, right? Or low. What happened? Did they all of a sudden change their diet? No, their body is in acute physiological stress. And so their cholesterol is being used up. And so before we continue, I really want to acknowledge something that's important. There is a real debate happening right now about whether or not high LDL is equally dangerous in every person. And there is a subset of people called lean mass hyperresponders who they tend to be metabolically otherwise healthy, very lean, low hemoglobin A1C, low triglycerides, low insulin, a high HDL. They're physically active, and yet they have super, super high LDL cholesterol levels. And they're making an argument that their risk may not be the same as someone with obesity, insulin resistance, fatty liver, diabetes, high inflammation, or multiple other, cardiometabolic issues, right? Why would anybody disagree with that? I'm going to explain why their environment is very different than our environment. And that's really not what this video is about, though, because the truth is, most people watching this don't fall in that category. Most people have high cholesterol, also struggle with at least one or more metabolic issues that I just listed. That's why I keep talking about blood sugar, insulin resistance, inflammation, fatty liver, high triglycerides, right? Visceral fat. They're struggling with thyroid, poor sleep, high blood pressure, high heart rate, right? They have metabolic dysfunction. And in that setting, high cholesterol is just making inflammation worse. And remember, each of these values is one marker of your metabolism, and that when it's off, it's stress and your body's inflamed. And that's exactly, what I want to talk about. Because if you understand what metabolic state your body lives in, what triggers your immunity and inflammation, then you'll understand how to optimize your cholesterol naturally in a way that actually reduces inflammation to improve your immunity to gain longevity. And that is a longevity win, right? We're not doing short-term gains. And I've worked with people with metabolic dysfunction, thousands of people in the last 27 years. And throughout that time, cholesterol has always been a steady state background issue. And it's gotten an influx of billions of dollars in attention currency. Yet, chronic diseases are still rising. So obviously that's not, it, right? And these influencers, I know they're trying to help people who are struggling with their health, but could there be a link, right? I don't know. But what people don't realize is that these online debates, they're not speaking the same language because cholesterol, as I mentioned, is not one thing. So we need to stop treating cholesterol like it's just one number with one meaning. It's not. That would be like me saying my transportation is bad. Does that mean my bike broke or public transportation is lousy where I'm at? Or maybe I have no tires on my car or I ran out of gas. And that's what people are doing with cholesterol. They're not talking about the same thing. So let's clean it all up. Let's start with LDL. It's known as a bad cholesterol, but LDL is not even cholesterol. LDL is a lipoprotein particle that carries cholesterol around the bloodstream. Think of LDL as a delivery truck. So if you drive in traffic, I'm sure you'll notice lots of trucks around when you're heavy traffic, right? And I literally can start counting the trucks when I'm driving in LA because that's how slow I'm going. And so heavy trucks, they destroy the road. They're not my most favorite vehicles to drive next to, but society needs trucks because we need to get our goods. But if the truck was carrying radioactive toxins, then I don't want to be next to it. So the question is not whether or not LDL is inherently evil. The question is really how many LDLs are there? And the road that it's driving on, what condition is that road, right? What conditions are those blood vessels? Because the LDL trucks, they could be damaging and adding to the damage of that blood vessel. And if you've ever gotten, a flat tire from a pothole or seen debris or trash on the road, you understand that the condition of the road really dictates your health and safety and the longevity of your car. So if your blood vessels are damaged, inflamed, sticky, oxidized from high blood sugars, high insulin, then those LDL particles will add to the stress of the blood vessels so much more than if you had clean blood vessels. And did you know that people online, they Some people like to have higher cholesterol numbers. They argue that it's totally normal and okay for them. But it may increase their infection risk. It just so happens that when you're septic or very sick, a lot of people have low LDL levels. But these people fail to recognize that they have low LDL levels because these people are so sick, they're using their LDL to mitigate their infections. And it's a bunch of other metabolic problems that makes them susceptible to the infection in the first place. So ultimately, the end result is bad metabolism, and we're just seeing the markers change in a finite point of time. Hence, I know a lot about different medical issues because I see the human body subjected to all these different stresses. And I look at it at different points of time in a population, right? As opposed to just one finite point of time. Some studies have said that lower LDL may put you at a lower risk of bacterial infections, but higher risk of viral infections. And so the LDL particles, they're literally used to bind bacterial toxins, especially a super inflammatory toxin called lipopolysaccharide. And that's a driver for sepsis and severe inflammation. So when you have LDL particles, you can clear LPS faster, but it has to do with LDL receptor activity. So when you have low LDL, you increase your LDL receptor activity. On the other hand, some viruses, they actually use that LDL receptor to enter into cells. And a lot of these studies have shown that low LDL increases your risk of infections, but their observational paper focus on sick people who are hospitalized. And so when you're sick, you have liver disease, cancer, you don't make much cholesterol because you're spent. And that's a very different population than people like you and I who are out there healthy and our cholesterol numbers changes. Does that make sense? The environment in which your body is in dictates whether your LDL means good or bad. So that's why it's hard to interpret. And the dialogue that's missing from all these cholesterol debate is that lipoproteins, they're not just passive cholesterol carriers. They participate in your immune biology. That's kind of the whole point of this tangent. So how you get your LDL low is very important in dictating your immunity that dictates your longevity. And that's why I focus on natural ways in which to help me optimize longevity and to help you optimize longevity. And we're not just focused on one marker, right? It's just one marker, folks. There's so many other markers, right? Nobody debates about triglyceride being too high, but there's a whole bunch of people debating about LDL, whether you should have it high or low. High triglycerides, that's just simply a marker that you are eating too much sugar and starch, refined starch, right? It's a marker for insulin resistance, fatty liver, or excess alcohol. In other words, you're eating too many calories and you have a problem handling your carbohydrates. And triglycerides, they often tell you more about the other ways your system is overloaded than LDL alone. I want to mention HDL. That's often called the good cholesterol. But remember, higher HDL is associated with lower cardiovascular risk. But this is where nuance matters, because if you artificially raise your HDL, it's not really translating into lower risks for mortality or heart disease. And that's a huge clue. So in the context of HDL, how you get it high actually matters. If you exercise, sleep well, eat whole foods that are plant-based, are insulin sensitive, have lower inflammation, that's very different than pushing a chemical and swallowing that every day. So a healthy lab number produced by a healthy physiology is not the same as a low lab number or a high lab number produced by manipulation. And that's a major point. As you can see, there are several different lipoproteins that carry cholesterol. It's very confusing. And that is hence why you need to learn cholesterol talk so that you can know which markers to check. So there are two markers that you probably haven't heard of that's important to get checked. Number one is ApoB. And this actually can tell you more data than just checking your LDL number. And this is the reason why. ApoB is in several lipoprotein particles, LDL, VLDL, ILDL, lipoprotein little a. They are all usually carrying one ApoB molecule. HDL, LDL, they're not cholesterol, they're lipoproteins. They also carry cholesterol. And yes, in many healthy populations, the common thread with all of these molecules is that they are potentially very damaging to your blood vessels when you have too many of them. ApoB is a more of an accurate number if you want to assess your atherosclerotic risk. And if you have that abnormal, then that's when you need to reduce your trucks on the road. Because when it comes to blood flow, there's no flow when there's a traffic congestion. And hence why we got to clean up our roads with our foods. And that's the whole point of this cholesterol. How do we clean up the road, right? Because ultimately, you got to preserve your blood flow. All diseases end in bad blood flow. And inflammation is a driver of that bad blood flow. So you don't want to have excess in anything, whether it's food, sugar, or clotting factors or cholesterol. Because, just like clotting factors, if you have, too little, you bleed. You have too much, you clot. You spontaneously clot. You can have a pulmonary embolus, and that can shave your mortality too. And so hence, we got to get our blood markers normal naturally. We got to do more than just take a pill. Sometimes you have to take a pill. It really depends on your underlying blood vessel health, right? So if you already have insulin resistant, chronic inflammation, high blood pressure, hormonal problems, then maybe you need to take a pill to kind of jumpstart your way to a healthy blood vessels. It's important also to put food and lifestyle on top of whatever pharmacology that you're using. And just like everything else, there's always going to be a genetic component to our life. It's called epigenetics. But one of the genes can make lipoprotein little a. And if you have high lipoprotein A, it increases your cardiovascular risk for a bad outcome. And this is one reason why you can do everything right and still end up with plaque and heart disease. And that's a marker worth checking at least once in your life. And if it's normal, that's it. You don't need to get that marker checked again. But if it's abnormal, then you have a conversation with your cardiologist. What can you do about your cholesterol? What do you need to do about cholesterol, and which cholesterol do you need to reduce? And that's the thing, right? The same cholesterol number can mean different things in different metabolic environments, different people. Hence, there are different goals for your metabolism. If you're very high risk, you could get a fatal heart attack, right? And that's why your cardiologist may want your LDL cholesterol to be lower than 55 milligrams per deciliter. And if you're not that high of a risk, it's acceptable to have less than 100 milligrams per deciliter. I mean, that's the whole point. Cholesterol doesn't float around in a vacuum. It's not one size fit all solution like the Instagrammers and, whatever YouTubers are telling you. If your blood cholesterol floats around in, like a lot of other fats, blood sugar, lots of inflammation, unhealthy thyroid numbers, more oxidative stress, mental health issues, that's a very different environment than, having clean, perfect blood vessels. So that's why, the question shouldn't be what lowers cholesterol the fastest. The question should be what improves my metabolism so that my cholesterol can be optimized in it, right? That's a longevity question. And so that brings us to another important point that I really haven't addressed in this entire video is saturated fat. And that's super important when it comes to the cholesterol conversation. So if you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.